Felix Donovan's fingers hovered over the glass keyboard, his reflection fragmented across the three curved monitors that bathed his face in cold blue light. His studio apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay should have felt like a sanctuary of creativity, but for 6 months now, it had become his prison, a sleek, modern cell where melodies died before they could be born. The wall of platinum records mocked him silently from across the room, artifacts from a time when music flowed through him like electricity, before the algorithms began to write better hooks than he ever could. "Maybe I don't have it anymore," he muttered, reaching for the tumbler of whiskey beside his synthesizer. At 34, Felix was already a legend in the electronic music world. 5 Grammy nominations, 3 wins, and a string of club anthems that defined a generation of dance floors. But success had its cost: endless tours, label pressure, and now, a creative drought that had stretched from weeks into months. His phone vibrated against the glass desk. Another text from Rhea Jennings, his agent. "They're asking about the album again, Felix. Sony's not patient anymore. 6-month extension is all I could get you." He didn't respond. What could he say? That the wunderkind producer who revolutionized synthpop had nothing left to say? That the sounds in his head had gone quiet? Felix minimized his empty composition software and pulled up a browser. He had been avoiding this moment for weeks, but desperation was a powerful motivator. He typed, "Harmony AI, the future of musical composition." The sleek website loaded instantly, black background with pulsing, colorful waveforms that danced across the screen like digital fireflies. Harmony AI was the newest frontier in artificial intelligence composition, trained on centuries of music and capable of creating original pieces in any style. Not just bland, algorithmic approximations, but music with feeling, or at least, that's what the reviews claimed. The price made him wince, $50,000 for unlimited private access to the premium version. But compared to the $2 million advance he'd already spent. "What choice do I have?" he whispered to the empty room, the city lights twinkling below like a circuit board come to life. 3 days later, Felix sat in the same chair, but something had changed. Energy coursed through him as he swiped through dozens of compositions Harmony had generated based on his previous work. The AI had studied every beat, every chord progression, every textural element of his discography and created something that was unmistakably Felix Donovan in style, yet fresh. Different. Maybe even better. He selected one particularly compelling framework and began to refine it, adding his own flourishes, stripping away unnecessary elements. For the first time in months, he worked until dawn, the coffee growing cold beside him, his eyes burning but alive with purpose. Over the next weeks, Felix and Harmony developed a strange creative partnership. He would feed the AI parameters, more ambient breakdown at the bridge, heavier bass drop, add nostalgic 90s piano sample, and it would generate options, each more intriguing than the last. Felix curated, refined, and arranged these elements, convincing himself he was still the true artist, merely using a new instrument. When Rhea visited his apartment in early March, she found a transformed man. "Jesus, Felix, you look." She paused, her dark eyes taking in his freshly cut hair and clear complexion as she stepped into the sunlit space. "Alive," he offered, gesturing her toward the kitchen island where espresso was brewing. The apartment was tidier now, windows open to the spring breeze. "I was going to say functional, but alive works too." Her heels clicked on the hardwood as she followed him. "So you've broken through the block?" Felix hesitated, just for a moment. "Something like that. Want to hear what I've been working on?" Rhea's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose as he played the first 3 tracks. By the 4th, she was nodding unconsciously to the rhythm, her red-painted fingernails tapping against the marble counter. This is incredible, Felix. It sounds like you, but evolved. The label is going to flip." She leaned forward. "How did you crack it? What changed?" The lie came easily. "Stopped forcing it. Started experimenting with new production methods." Not technically false, AI assistance was a new method, wasn't it? "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. This album could be your biggest yet." As Rhea left, Felix felt the first pinprick of guilt beneath his sternum. But he pushed it away. Artists had always used tools. Was this really so different? Revenant dropped in July to universal acclaim. Critics hailed it as Donovan's most mature work yet and a stunning evolution of his signature sound. The first single, Digital Afterlife, topped charts in 27 countries. The second, Ghost in the Code, was already being licensed for a major film soundtrack. No one questioned the creative process, no one except Felix himself, alone in his apartment at night, watching the royalty numbers climb, feeling increasingly hollow with each zero added to his bank account. The text from Rhea came at 2:17 a.m., 3 months after the album's release. "Call me. Emergency." When he did, her voice was tight with controlled panic. "There's a problem. A big one. I'm coming over." 30 minutes later, she paced his living room, her silk blouse reflecting the city lights that streamed through the windows. Some tech blogger did a deep analysis of your album. They're claiming patterns in the music suggest AI composition. It's starting to spread. Felix's mouth went dry. So what? Lots of producers use AI tools now. Not for entire compositions. Not without disclosure. She stopped pacing. "Felix, did you use Harmony AI?" The silence between them stretched taut. Not just as a tool, she realized, reading his face. "You let it write the music." "I refined everything," he defended. "I chose what worked. I arranged it. But the core compositions, the melodies, the structures, they're AI generated." He couldn't meet her eyes. Rhea sank onto his couch, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her phone. "This is bad, Felix. Your contract with Sony specifically states all creative work must be original. There are clauses about technology assistance. No one needs to know the extent, they're already figuring it out. There are people running your previous albums and this one through analysis programs. The patterns are different. They can tell it's not you." She rubbed her temples. "And that's not even the worst part. What could be worse? Harmony's terms of service. Have you read them?" Felix felt a chill slide down his spine. "The standard stuff. They don't claim ownership of what users create with, that's not what they say at all." Rhea's voice was flat. "Harmony retains partial intellectual rights to all compositions created with their premium service. It's buried in the fine print, but it's absolutely there. That's insane. No one would agree to that. Apparently you did, when you checked the box. And now that people are questioning the album's origins, Harmony's parent company is asserting their claim. They want co-writing credits and a percentage of royalties." Felix stood and walked to the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. Far below, headlights streamed across the Bay Bridge in luminous ribbons. "Who owns Harmony?" he asked quietly. Rhea's voice was barely audible behind him. "Donovan Digital Ventures." He turned slowly. "What did you say?" "Your cousin's company. Francis Donovan's tech firm. They acquired Harmony last year." The room seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Francis. His estranged cousin, the tech entrepreneur who had tried to partner with Felix years ago on a music production software company. The cousin Felix had dismissively told to stick to coding because he didn't understand real music. The cousin who had gone on to build a tech empire while publicly citing Felix's rejection as his motivation. "Francis is suing me," Felix said numbly. "My own blood is coming after my work." "Technically," Rhea said carefully, "you're being sued by yourself. You signed away partial rights to your own musical identity when you used their AI. The algorithms were trained on your previous work to create new Felix Donovan compositions." The irony was bitter enough to choke him. The lawsuit became public the following week. Grammy-winning producer sued over AI-generated album, the headline screamed. Felix's social media erupted with both support and condemnation. Some fellow artists defended him, hadn't they all used technology to enhance their work? Others called him a fraud, a harbinger of creative apocalypse. Felix shut it all out, holed up in his apartment with the blinds drawn. The only person he allowed in was Rhea, who arrived one rainy evening with takeout and legal updates. "They're offering a settlement," she said, spreading containers of Thai food across his coffee table. 30% of all royalties, co-writing credits on every track, and a public statement acknowledging Harmony's contribution. "And if I refuse?" "They go to court, where they'll prove the music was generated by their AI. You'll likely lose all rights to the album, face contract violations with Sony, and possibly have to return your advance." She paused. "Plus, your reputation." Felix pushed his food away untouched. "I want to meet with Francis." "Felix, your lawyers advised against. Arrange it, Rhea. Please." 3 days later, Felix stepped into the gleaming headquarters of Donovan Digital Ventures. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and brushed steel, with holographic displays showcasing the company's various tech products. Employees with clear security badges flowed around him like water around a stone. A young assistant led him to an elevator that required biometric scanning. "Mr. Donovan is waiting for you in the Sky Garden," she said as the doors closed. The elevator rose 60 floors without stopping. When the doors opened, Felix stepped into an indoor botanical garden. Real trees and plants grew among streams and small waterfalls, all enclosed in a glass dome that offered a panoramic view of San Francisco. At the center, a man stood with his back to Felix, gazing out at the city. "Hello, cousin," Francis said without turning. 7 years had passed since they'd last met, but Francis looked remarkably unchanged, still lean and angular, with the same close-cropped dark hair. Only when he turned did Felix see the new lines around his eyes, the authority in his posture that came with building a billion-dollar company. "Nice place," Felix said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Very supervillain chic." Francis smiled thinly. "Still the same old Felix. Come, let's sit." He led Felix to a small table beside a stream where tea was already waiting. The subtle sound of water over stones filled the silence between them. "Why are you doing this?" Felix asked finally. "You've already won. You built this empire. Why come after me?" Francis poured tea with deliberate precision. "I'm not coming after you. I'm protecting my company's intellectual property rights." "Bullshit. This is personal and you know it." "Perhaps there's some satisfaction in the situation," Francis acknowledged. "You dismissed my ideas about the future of music technology as worthless. Now you're dependent on that very technology." Felix fought to keep his voice level. "I made a mistake. I was desperate and took a shortcut." "A shortcut?" Francis raised an eyebrow. "You achieved what musicians have feared for decades. You were replaced by an algorithm. An algorithm that studied you so well it became a better version of you. The music isn't better. Critics and streams suggest otherwise." Francis sipped his tea. "The irony is, I created Harmony because I believed AI should enhance human creativity, not replace it. You chose to use it as a crutch instead of a tool." Felix stared into his untouched tea, watching the steam rise and dissipate. "What do you really want, Francis?" "Originally? The settlement terms. Now that you're here." Francis set down his cup. "I want you to work with us, not against us. Help us develop the next version of Harmony, one that genuinely collaborates with artists rather than replacing them." Felix looked up, suspicious. "Why would you want my help?" "Because despite everything, you understand music in ways our engineers don't. And because publicly fighting you damages both our brands." Francis leaned forward. "Also, believe it or not, family still means something to me." The offer lingered between them, unexpected and complex. Felix studied his cousin's face, searching for deception but finding only calculated sincerity. "I need to think about it," Felix said finally. "Take your time. The offer expires with the settlement window, 2 weeks." As Felix rose to leave, Francis added, "There's something else you should know. Harmony didn't create those compositions from nothing. The seed of every idea came from fragments in your own unreleased work, files you abandoned but never deleted. The AI simply finished what you started. The revelation followed Felix like a ghost as he left the building and wandered through the city. Night fell, and rain began to fall, catching the neon lights of Market Street in shimmering reflections. He found himself at a small jazz club he used to frequent before fame made public appearances complicated. Inside, a quartet played to a half-empty room, live musicians creating in real time, communicating through subtle nods and eye contact, responding to the audience's energy. Felix sat in a dark corner, nursing a scotch, letting the authenticity of the performance wash over him. Halfway through the set, he noticed a woman watching him from the bar, not with the recognition of a fan, but with the curiosity of a stranger. She approached during a break between songs, sliding into the seat across from him without asking. Up close, she was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, intense eyes, a mouth that looked ready to either smile or deliver devastating criticism. "You look like you're at a funeral, not a jazz show," she observed, setting down her martini. "Maybe I am. Mourning my career." She studied him for a moment. "You're him, aren't you? The producer who got caught using AI." Felix tensed. "If you're a journalist, relax. I'm a programmer. Ruby Jenkins." She extended her hand. "I work in machine learning ethics, actually." The coincidence seemed too perfect. "Did my cousin send you?" Ruby laughed. "Francis Donovan? God, no. We've been adversaries since I published a paper criticizing his company's data harvesting practices." She sipped her drink. "Complete coincidence. I come here Thursdays." Against his better judgment, Felix found himself opening up to this stranger. Perhaps it was her outsider perspective on both the music and tech industries, or maybe just the way she listened without judgment. They talked through 2 more sets, moving from his scandal to broader questions about creativity, technology, and authenticity. "The thing is," Ruby said, leaning forward, "AI can't create meaning. It can simulate patterns it's observed, but it doesn't understand why music moves us. It doesn't know heartbreak or joy or longing. But if listeners can't tell the difference, does it matter? I think it matters to the creator." Her eyes held his. "The question isn't whether AI can make music that sounds good. It's whether making music still means something to you if you're just curating outputs." Her words followed Felix home that night, echoing in his mind as he lay awake watching shadows move across his ceiling. Before dawn, he rose and did something he hadn't done in months. He sat at his keyboard with all the software turned off and simply played, fingers finding melodies without direction or purpose, just the pure expression of feeling. The next day, he called Rhea. "I've made a decision," he told her. "I'm going to come clean, completely clean. Press conference, full disclosure, everything." Her sharp intake of breath was audible. "Felix, your lawyers strongly advise against, then I'll get new lawyers. I'm tired of living in this limbo. What about Francis's offer?" Felix paused. "I'm going to counter with one of my own." The press conference was held in a boutique hotel's conference room, intimate enough to feel personal but large enough to accommodate the significant media interest. Felix stood at the podium, cameras flashing, with Rhea beside him and Ruby, somewhat surprisingly, in the front row. He'd called her the night before, and something in his voice must have convinced her to come. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "I want to address the controversy surrounding my album Revenant." He took a deep breath. "The allegations are true. I used an AI program called Harmony to generate the foundational compositions for the album. I then arranged, produced, and refined those compositions, but the creative spark, the melodies and structures that make the music what it is, those came from artificial intelligence." The room erupted in questions. Felix raised his hands for quiet. "I was wrong to do this, and I was wrong to hide it. I broke trust with my fans, my label, and myself. I've already begun the process of removing the album from all platforms and returning my advance payment to Sony. More commotion, more shouted questions. Felix waited for it to subside. As for Donovan Digital Ventures' lawsuit, I've proposed an alternative to their settlement offer. I've offered to work with them on developing ethical guidelines for AI in creative industries, not as an employee, but as an independent consultant representing artists' interests. He looked directly into the main camera. To my fellow musicians and producers, this is our wake-up call. Technology isn't going away, but we need to establish how it should support human creativity, not replace it. And to my fans, I promise my next work will come from me, my experiences, my emotions, my hands on the instruments. It may take time, but it will be real. The aftermath was predictably chaotic. Felix Donovan trended globally for days. Some called him brave, others called him a sellout who only confessed when caught. Sony's legal team initiated proceedings for contract violation, though public opinion was shifting enough that they approached the situation cautiously. Francis called the day after the press conference. "Bold move," he said when Felix answered. "Not what I expected. Are you accepting my counteroffer?" A pause. "Yes. But with conditions. You'll work with our team in a limited capacity, and you'll acknowledge that our technology has valid applications when used ethically." "I can do that." "Good." Another pause. "For what it's worth, I respect what you did yesterday." It took courage. Coming from Francis, it was as close to an olive branch as Felix could expect. The hardest part was starting over musically. Felix moved out of his luxury apartment into a smaller place in Oakland with enough space for a modest but analog-focused studio. No AI, minimal digital processing, just instruments, microphones, and the recording essentials. Ruby became a regular visitor, initially discussing the ethics project with Francis's company but increasingly present for reasons that had nothing to do with work. They'd sit for hours, talking about everything and nothing, her programmer's precision complementing his artistic intuition in ways that continually surprised him. "Play me something," she said one evening, months after the scandal had finally begun to fade from public consciousness. Felix hesitated. "It's not finished." "I don't care. I want to hear what you're really working on." He sat at the upright piano, a far cry from his previous high-tech setup, and began to play. The composition was simple compared to his electronic productions, just piano and subtle synthesizer, but it contained something his AI work never had: vulnerability. When he finished, the room felt charged with unspoken emotion. "That's you," Ruby said softly. "That's really you." Later that night, as they lay together in the darkness of his bedroom, Felix confessed his deepest fear. "What if I can never make anything as commercially successful as what the AI created? What if I've peaked, and it wasn't even really me at my peak?" Ruby propped herself up on one elbow, her silhouette outlined by the streetlight filtering through the blinds. "Maybe success isn't selling millions of copies. Maybe it's creating something that matters to you. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who threw away a career. You didn't throw it away. You're rebuilding it on an honest foundation." She touched his face. "The question is, what do you really want your music to mean?" It took 18 months to complete the new album. Felix worked without deadlines, without label pressure, financing the project himself from what remained of his previous earnings. He brought in live musicians, recorded in unconventional spaces, and for the first track, even collaborated with Francis, human to human, no AI involved, in a gesture of reconciliation that surprised them both. The album, titled simply Human after all, was released independently. It didn't top charts or break streaming records. Critics called it a raw, intimate departure and daringly unpolished compared to his previous work. Some fans of his electronic peak drifted away, but others connected more deeply than ever before. At the small release party in a converted warehouse space, surrounded by the musicians who had contributed to the album and the small team who had helped bring it to life, Felix found himself standing slightly apart from the crowd, watching Ruby laugh with one of the backup singers. Rhea appeared at his side, champagne in hand. "So," she said, "was it worth it?" Felix considered the question, thinking about everything he'd lost and gained over the past 2 years, the fame and fortune sacrificed, the integrity and peace recovered. "I had a realization while making this album," he said. "The reason I turned to AI wasn't just creative block. It was that I'd lost connection with why I make music in the first place." "And have you found it again?" Felix watched as Ruby noticed his gaze and smiled across the room at him. "I think so. Music isn't just patterns and techniques. It's a human trying to say something that matters to them, hoping it might matter to someone else too." "Well," Rhea clinked her glass against his, "for what it's worth, I think this album is your best work. Not your biggest, but your best." Later that night, as the party wound down, Felix and Ruby stood on the roof deck, looking out over the Oakland skyline toward San Francisco glittering across the bay. In the distance, the illuminated spire of Donovan Digital Ventures pierced the night sky. "Your cousin called today," Ruby said. "The ethical guidelines we developed are being implemented across their entire AI creative suite. They're going to require full disclosure for any commercial work using their tools." "Good," Felix nodded. "It's a start." He also said Harmony has been analyzing your new album. Apparently it's struggling to understand your new musical directions. She smiled. "You've officially outgrown your algorithm." Felix laughed, a genuine sound that still surprised him sometimes. Maybe that was the point all along. To become something the AI couldn't predict. Ruby leaned against him, and they stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflected in the dark water of the bay. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more music to create, more boundaries to navigate between human creativity and technological assistance. But tonight, Felix felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the quiet satisfaction of having made something entirely his own, imperfect but authentic. The machine had written better hooks, but it couldn't write his truth. That, he had finally realized, was the one thing that would always remain uniquely human.